The reputation. Grand Admiral Thexkor of the Crixian Empire studied the holographic display with increasing discomfort. His chitinous exoskeleton clicked softly as he shifted position, a rare tell that betrayed his agitation to the other high-ranking officers in the war chamber. This human, he gestured with a clawed appendage at the unremarkable figure displayed in the center of the room, has cost us 3 mining colonies, exclusive rights to the Proxima Neutronium fields, and favorable trade agreements with 7 formerly loyal systems. The hologram showed a human of average height and build, with short brown hair and an utterly forgettable face. Nothing about the human named Alex Harper suggested they should be feared by the mightiest empire spanning 17 star systems. Most perplexing, said Strategic Director Vexlera, her compound eyes reflecting the holographic light, is that Harper isn't even Earth's chief negotiator. Merely an advisor who sits in the background during diplomatic engagements. The assembled Crixian leadership hissed in unison, a sound that would have frozen the blood of most species in the galaxy. The Crixians had conquered 36 species through a combination of overwhelming military force and masterful diplomatic manipulation. Only humanity had managed to maintain independence, gradually shifting from a position of vulnerability to one of growing influence. The Terrans are clever, rumbled Defense Minister Zexur. They present their actual negotiators as figureheads while this Harper person somehow controls everything from the shadows. Admiral Thexkor replayed footage from the most recent diplomatic disaster. The formal negotiation chamber on Outpost Station Epsilon featured representatives from 22 different species. The Crixian delegation, led by their most formidable diplomatic mind, Ambassador Kroval, had prepared for months. Their proposal for mutual development of the contested Rigel system was a masterpiece of subtle domination disguised as cooperation. In the recording, Harper sat quietly in the background, 7 seats removed from Earth's chief negotiator. For the first 2 hours, the human did nothing but occasionally make notes on an archaic paper notebook with a graphite writing implement. The Crixian negotiators were executing their strategy flawlessly until there. Admiral Thexkor froze the playback. Watch carefully. Harper had looked up from the notebook, caught Ambassador Kroval's eye, and smiled slightly. Just a small expression. Nothing more. Kroval, a veteran of 67 high-stakes negotiations, who had once secured the surrender of an entire star system through sheer force of personality, visibly faltered. "Curious," said Harper, speaking for the first time. "Your development plan for the Rigel system includes provisions for atmospheric processors on the 4th planet, but there's no mention of the indigenous microbial ecosystem discovered by the Alturian science team last cycle." The footage continued as Harper asked a series of seemingly innocent questions. Somehow, over the next hour, the Crixian position unraveled completely. By the end of the session, Ambassador Kroval had not only agreed to stringent environmental protections that made efficient resource extraction nearly impossible, but had also conceded to joint administration of the system with equal representation from Earth. "It defies analysis," said Vexlera, mandibles clicking in frustration. "We've studied human negotiation techniques. We've employed psychological warfare specialists. We've analyzed Harper's background extensively and found nothing unusual," added Intelligence Director Kexorn. "Academic performance slightly above average. No specialized training in advanced negotiation. No evidence of psionic abilities, though we tested for them covertly during the Centauri conference. Yet somehow," Admiral Thexkor's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper, "this unremarkable human consistently undermines our most sophisticated diplomatic efforts." The hologram shifted to display Harper's personal history. Born in Minneapolis, Earth. Education in international relations at a respectable, but not elite university. 10 years in Earth's diplomatic corps with a solid but unremarkable service record before being assigned to interstellar negotiations. "Perhaps," suggested Kexorn, his voice careful, "we are overthinking this. Perhaps the solution is simply to remove Harper from the equation." A heavy silence fell over the war chamber. The Crixian Empire hadn't maintained dominion over 17 star systems by hesitating to eliminate obstacles. The human must never know we perceive them as a threat, Admiral Thexkor finally said. Arrange an accident. Something that cannot be traced back to us. 3 cycles later, the Crixian leadership reconvened in the same chamber. The atmosphere was noticeably tenser. Explain, demanded Admiral Thexkor, each syllable dripping with barely contained fury. Intelligence Director Kexorn's exoskeleton had faded to a sickly gray hue, a sign of extreme stress among his kind. The operation failed. Our agent had positioned the explosive device within Harper's personal transport vessel. The detonation sequence was flawless. However, the holographic display activated, showing security footage from the spaceport on Europa Station. Harper could be seen approaching the transport vessel, then stopping suddenly. The human appeared to check something on their communication device, frowned, and turned away. Moments later, a maintenance worker entered the vessel instead. Harper received an emergency diplomatic communication requiring immediate attention. Kexorn explained. The maintenance technician was killed instead. A coincidence, hissed Strategic Director Vexilera. The first time, perhaps, said Kexorn. But we have attempted 6 different elimination scenarios over the past cycle. Each time, Harper has escaped through what appears to be sheer happenstance. The display cycled through various surveillance footage, Harper bending to retrieve a dropped stylus just as a sniper fired. A power outage redirecting Harper's shuttle moments before the original vessel suffered catastrophic failure. A seemingly random security scan detecting poison in Harper's meal. What about the memory worm? Asked Defense Minister Zexur. Implanted successfully, said Kexorn. It should have erased Harper's diplomatic expertise without affecting basic functions. However, during the following negotiation session regarding the Ta Siti mining rights, the display showed Harper calmly dismantling the Crixian arguments, while their negotiator became increasingly flustered. The medical scan, demanded Admiral Thexkor. Human baseline in all respects, reported Kexorn. No implants, no genetic modifications, no evidence of pharmaceutical enhancement. Harper is, by all measurable standards, completely ordinary. A junior intelligence officer nervously approached the table. Honored leaders, we have reviewed the recordings from the Ta Siti negotiations and discovered something unusual. The display shifted to show Harper during a brief recess, conversing with representatives from the Alturian Confederation, traditional enemies of the Crixians. Watch the Alturians' tentacle movements, instructed the officer. Admiral Thexkor leaned forward. The Alturians' communication appendages were subtly shifting in patterns that even the most sophisticated Crixian diplomatic AIs had failed to decipher completely. The human understands tertiary Alturian emotive signaling, he realized with shock. Even our best xenolinguists struggle with their nonverbal communication. Not just understands, said the intelligence officer. Harper is responding in kind. Look at the micro-movements, the finger tapping, the subtle shifts in posture, the controlled breathing patterns. The human is communicating on multiple levels simultaneously. The revelation sent ripples of disquiet through the chamber. If Harper could intuitively grasp and utilize communication methods that the Crixian Empire's most advanced systems could barely detect, what other capabilities might this seemingly ordinary human possess? We have underestimated the threat, concluded Admiral Thexkor. Conventional approaches have failed. We must develop new countermeasures before the Arcturus negotiations next cycle. The mineral rights to 7 systems are at stake. As the Crixian leadership began formulating increasingly elaborate plans to neutralize the human threat, Harper sat in quarters aboard the United Earth diplomatic vessel, reviewing notes for upcoming negotiations and completely unaware of the fear they had inspired in the galaxy's most formidable empire. Or perhaps not completely unaware. A small smile played across Harper's lips as they made a note in their ever-present paper notebook. Crixians becoming cautious. A just approach for Arcturus discussions. The legend of the negotiation room human was just beginning. The countermeasures. The Grand Chamber of the Arcturus Diplomatic Center buzzed with the representatives of 27 spacefaring civilizations. Designed by the psychedelic Quonset architects to represent harmony through geometric impossibility, the room featured multiple gravity wells, specialized atmospheric bubbles, and lighting calibrated to the visual comfort ranges of dozens of different species. At the precisely calculated center of this diplomatic marvel sat an oval table of molecularly perfect neutronium crystal, a conspicuous display of wealth and technological prowess by the Arcturus Consortium, who had built the facility. Around this table gathered the most powerful negotiators in the galaxy, including the Crixian Empire's newly engineered diplomatic weapon. First speaker Kivex. Kivex was the culmination of the Empire's desperate countermeasures against the human Harper, a hybrid being with DNA from 6 different species, enhanced with neural implants and biochemical regulators, designed to maximize cognitive function and emotional control. Over 50 million resource units have been invested in creating a negotiator theoretically immune to Harper's mysterious influence. The first speaker has been programmed with every known human psychological weakness. Strategic Director Vexlera explained to Admiral Thexkor as they observed from the Crixian command vessel in orbit. Kivex possesses perfect recall of 17,000 previous human negotiations, complete emotional detachment, and resistance to subtle manipulative techniques. And yet I remain concerned, admitted Thexkor, watching as the Earth delegation entered the chamber. There were 5 of them. Earth's official negotiator, Ambassador Chen, 2 technical advisors carrying data tablets, a cultural attaché, and Harper, carrying nothing but that same primitive notebook and writing implement. Harper took a seat at the far end of the table, 7 places removed from the action, just as before. Kivex will not engage directly with Harper, Vexlera assured him. Our analysis suggests the human's influence requires eye contact and verbal exchange. Kivex has been instructed to focus exclusively on Ambassador Chen. The negotiations began with formal introductions, followed by the Arcturus Consortium's explanation of the disputed territories. 7 star systems, rich with rare minerals and habitable worlds, were being contested by multiple powers following the recent collapse of the ancient draconian hegemony, which had controlled the region for millennia. Kivex presented the Crixian position flawlessly, reasonable on the surface, with carefully hidden clauses that would eventually grant the Empire control over the most valuable resources. The presentation included immersive holographic displays of proposed development projects, compelling economic projections, and subtle psychological triggers designed to appeal to various species' cultural predispositions. For 2 hours, everything proceeded according to plan. Harper remained silent, occasionally writing in the notebook, but otherwise showing no reaction. Admiral Thexkor began to relax slightly. "Perhaps we overestimated this human," he murmured. The representatives took a short recess. As delegates mingled in the adjoining refreshment chamber, surveillance showed Harper approaching a refreshment synthesizer, seemingly struggling with the controls. "Kivex is approaching the human," Vexlera noted with alarm. "Why?" demanded Thexkor. The instructions were explicit. On screen, Kivex reached past Harper to operate the synthesizer controls. Harper smiled and said something. Kivex responded. The exchange lasted less than 30 seconds before they parted ways. What happened? Thexkor demanded of the monitoring technicians. "Audio analysis complete," reported a communications specialist. Harper thanked Kivex for assistance and commented on the complexity of the negotiations. Kivex acknowledged and provided a standard diplomatic response about seeking mutually beneficial outcomes. "Harmless pleasantries," said Vexlera, though her tone betrayed uncertainty. When the negotiations resumed, Kivex continued presenting the Crixian proposal with apparent effectiveness. Yet something had subtly changed. The first speaker's language had shifted almost imperceptibly, emphasizing cooperation over competition, mutual benefits over strategic advantages. "Kivex is deviating from the approved script," hissed a diplomatic analyst. Then Harper spoke for the first time, directing a question not to Kvex, but to the Arcturus Consortium moderator. I'm curious about the indigenous sentient species identified in the Callisto system. The development proposals seem to overlook their territorial claims under Galactic Charter Section 459. The chamber fell silent. The existence of a pre-spaceflight sentient species in the Callisto system had been classified information, known only to the highest levels of several governments, including the Crixian Empire, which had deliberately omitted this detail from their proposal. Kvex froze momentarily, neural implants working frantically to formulate a response. But before the first speaker could answer, Harper continued, addressing the full assembly. I've taken the liberty of preparing a supplementary analysis of all 7 systems, Harper said, transmitting data to the central display, including comprehensive ecological surveys and cultural heritage assessments that might interest everyone. The display filled with detailed information that should have been impossible for the human to possess. Admiral Thexkor watched in mounting horror as Harper methodically exposed the hidden weaknesses in not just the Crixian proposal, but those of 3 other major powers as well. Most disturbing of all, Harper did this while maintaining a tone of helpful collaboration rather than confrontation. Each devastating revelation was presented as a constructive addition to the discussion, an opportunity to create a better agreement for all parties. How is this possible? Thexkor demanded. The information about the Callisto sentience was secured in our most protected databases. Intelligence Director Kexorn's exoskeleton had paled to an almost translucent state. Unknown, Admiral. Either Earth's intelligence capabilities far exceed our estimates, or what? Thexkor's mandibles clicked ominously. Or Harper possesses capabilities we cannot explain. Finished, Kexorn. On screen, the dynamic of the negotiation had transformed completely. Kvex, the Empire's perfect negotiator engineered specifically to counter Harper, was now actively building upon the humans' points, proposing a collaborative oversight committee with representatives from all interested parties, including provisional representation for the Callisto sentience. Kvex has been compromised, Vexlara said, her voice hollow with disbelief. 30 seconds of contact was sufficient for the human to completely subvert our most advanced countermeasure. By the session's end, a framework agreement had been reached that bore little resemblance to any single party's original proposal. Resources would be equitably shared, ecological protections would be imposed, and a joint governance council would be established with equal representation from major powers and indigenous populations alike. The Crixian Empire, which had expected to secure dominant influence over at least 3 of the 7 systems, would now be just one voice among many. This goes beyond negotiation skill, Admiral Thexkor said as the Earth delegation departed the chamber. No ordinary human could have known about the Callisto sentience or predicted Kvex's responses so accurately. The Admiral made a decision. Initiate Protocol Omega. If we cannot counter this human through conventional means, we must discover the true nature of what we're facing. Protocol Omega was the Empire's most extreme intelligence operation, reserved for existential threats. It would commit vast resources to a single objective: uncovering Harper's secret, no matter the cost. As the Crixian leadership grimly prepared their most invasive intelligence operation, Harper returned to the Earth vessel, settling into their quarters with a cup of tea. Opening the paper notebook, they wrote a brief entry. Arcturus negotiations concluded successfully. Crixian hybrid negotiator interesting approach. Potential for genuine cooperation if freed from Imperial control. Empire becoming desperate. Will likely escalate significantly before next encounter. Prepare accordingly. Harper closed the notebook and smiled. The game was entering its most dangerous and most promising phase. The revelation. The Galactic Summit on neutral station Zenith represented the most significant diplomatic gathering in 2 centuries. Representatives from 112 spacefaring civilizations converged on the massive space station constructed specifically for this momentous occasion. The agenda: restructuring the fundamental power dynamics of the galaxy following the emergence of 4 new interstellar species and the recent dramatic technological breakthrough in instantaneous communication. For the Crixian Empire, however, the summit had a different significance. It represented their final opportunity to neutralize the human threat before their imperial dominance eroded beyond recovery. Protocol Omega has yielded results. Intelligence Director Kexorn reported to the Crixian High Command in their secure chamber aboard their flagship. His exoskeleton had regained some of its natural luster, suggesting renewed confidence. Admiral Thexkor leaned forward. Explain. The holographic display activated, showing Harper's complete life history reconstructed through the most invasive intelligence operation the Empire had ever conducted. Thousands of agents, billions of resources, and numerous illegal incursions into Earth databases had produced a comprehensive profile of the mysterious human. "We now understand why conventional countermeasures failed," said Kexorn. "Harper is not what they appear to be." The display showed medical records, genetic analyses, and neural scans performed covertly during Harper's sleep cycle on 3 separate occasions. "The human has a rare neurological condition," explained Kexorn. "It affects the paralimbic system and mirror neurons, areas associated with empathy and social cognition in humans." "A weakness?" asked Strategic Director Vexlera hopefully. "No," said Kexorn. "An enhancement. Harper's brain processes social and emotional information differently than typical humans. They perceive micro-expressions, subtle biochemical changes, and non-verbal cues that others miss entirely. Furthermore, they instinctively adapt their own communication patterns to match those of whoever they're speaking with." The display showed brain activity comparisons between Harper and average humans during various social interactions. Where normal brains lit up in predictable patterns, Harper's blazed with activity across multiple regions simultaneously. "Harper doesn't manipulate people consciously," continued Kexorn. "They simply understand others on a level so fundamental that influence happens naturally. They recognize patterns of thought and behavior that most beings, including our most sophisticated AIs, cannot detect." "Is it technological?" demanded Admiral Thexkor. "Genetic engineering. Some form of augmentation we've missed." "No," said Kexorn. "It appears to be a natural variation. Harper was born this way, though their abilities have refined with experience. They're not unique among humans, either. Approximately 1 in 10,000 humans possesses similar neurological structures to varying degrees. Earth's diplomatic corps has simply been clever enough to identify and utilize these individuals." Strategic Director Vexlera's compound eyes flickered rapidly, her species equivalent of distress. "You're suggesting Earth has more like Harper?" "Undoubtedly," confirmed Kexorn. "Though our analysis suggests Harper is exceptional even among this subset of humans." Admiral Thexkor absorbed this information in silence. The implications were staggering. Not a technology that could be countered, not a strategy that could be anticipated, but a fundamental difference in perception and processing that gave these humans an insurmountable advantage in social interactions, including negotiations. "We have developed a countermeasure," Kexorn continued, perhaps sensing the Admiral's dark mood. "A neurological inhibitor field calibrated specifically to disrupt the unique functioning of Harper's brain. When activated, it should reduce their capabilities to standard human baseline or below." "Has it been tested?" asked Thexkor. "Not on Harper directly," admitted Kexorn. "The field generators have been installed throughout the main negotiation chamber. They will activate when the critical voting session begins." Admiral Thexkor nodded grimly. "This summit will determine galactic power distribution for the next millennium. We cannot fail." The summit's opening ceremonies proceeded with the customary displays of cultural significance from major powers. The Earth delegation included the usual complement: senior diplomats, technical specialists, cultural attaches, and Harper still carrying only the paper notebook that had become something of a galactic curiosity. Rumors about the enigmatic human had spread far beyond the Crixian Empire. Representatives from dozens of civilizations watched Harper covertly, some with fear, others with fascination. Stories circulated about Harper's uncanny ability to resolve seemingly intractable conflicts, identify hidden agendas, and forge unexpected alliances. The Crixian delegation observed as Harper moved through the preliminary social functions with apparent ease, engaging briefly with representatives from various species, from the crystalline Tholians to the gaseous Medusan collective. Each interaction seemed casual, yet the Crixian analysts noted subtle shifts in Harper's communication style, body language, and even breathing patterns as they adapted to each new conversation partner. "Remarkable," murmured Strategic Director Vexlera, despite herself. "Their adaptability is perfect. With the Draconians, they became still and formal. With the Altarians, expressive and animated. Yet it appears completely natural, not calculated." "It will not matter," said Admiral Thexkor, "once the inhibitor field activates." 3 days into the summit, the critical voting session arrived. At stake was the new structure of the Galactic Council and resource allocation rights for the next century. The Crixian Empire had positioned itself as the stabilizing force in a chaotic galaxy, promising security and prosperity under their guidance. Essentially, a benevolent dictatorship with the Empire at its head. Earth and its allies advocated for a more distributed power structure with checks and balances. The vote was expected to be close, with several key civilizations still undecided. As the delegates filed into the Grand Chamber, Intelligence Director Kexorn confirmed the neurological inhibitor field was ready. "Activation in 3 minutes," he reported. Precisely when Harper would typically begin exerting influence, based on previous patterns. Admiral Thexkor watched intently as the Earth delegation took their positions. Ambassador Chen would present Earth's final statement before the vote, with Harper seated nearby, close enough to advise, but not the center of attention. The chamber quieted as the proceedings began. The Crixian first speaker delivered a compelling final argument for their vision of galactic governance, emphasizing stability, security, and prosperity. Several undecided delegations showed positive responses according to the Crixian analysts' readings. Then Earth's Ambassador Chen rose to speak. As she did, Harper passed her a small note from the ever-present notebook. "Activate the field now," ordered Admiral Thexkor. Kexorn complied. Throughout the chamber, hidden generators powered up, creating an invisible field specifically designed to disrupt Harper's unique neural pathways. Ambassador Chen began speaking, outlining Earth's vision for a collaborative galactic community. The Crixian leadership watched Harper intently for signs of disorientation or diminished function. Instead, Harper smiled directly at the hidden Crixian observation devices and wrote something in the notebook, angling it slightly so the surveillance could capture the message. "Did you really think I wouldn't notice?" Admiral Thexkor felt his primary heart spasm in shock. Impossible. Harper stood and approached the central podium, a breach of protocol that caused murmurs throughout the assembly. Ambassador Chen, surprisingly, yielded the floor without protest. "Esteemed representatives," Harper began, voice calm and clear despite the neurological disruption field operating at maximum intensity. "Before we vote on our collective future, I believe we should address the illegal neurological disruption field currently operating in this chamber." Chaos erupted as delegations demanded explanations. The summit security forces quickly located and disabled the hidden Crixian technology. "How?" hissed Vexlera. "The field should have incapacitated them completely." Harper continued addressing the assembly once order had been restored. "The Crixian Empire has demonstrated today the philosophy that underlies their proposal: control through dominance, progress through suppression of others." Then Harper did something unprecedented. Instead of condemning the Empire further, they pivoted. "Yet I suggest we view this not as reason to reject the Crixians, but as an opportunity to demonstrate the strength of the collaborative approach Earth proposes. The human went on to outline a compromise position that incorporated elements from multiple proposals, including parts of the Crixian security framework, while distributing actual power more equitably. As Harper spoke, displays around the chamber showed the new proposal taking shape, a complex but elegant system of shared governance with multiple layers of representation. Most astonishing to the watching Crixian leadership was the reaction of their own first speaker, who found themselves nodding in agreement as Harper addressed concerns the Crixians had discussed only in their most secure communications. When the vote came, the results were decisive. The galaxy would adopt a version of Harper's compromise proposal, creating a new council structure that included the Crixian Empire as one of 7 major powers rather than the dominant force they had aspired to be, but with greater influence than Earth's original proposal would have granted them. In the aftermath, as delegations celebrated or strategized according to their natures, Harper approached the Crixian delegation directly. Admiral Thexcor, who had been summoned to manage the diplomatic disaster, found himself face to face with the human who had dismantled his empire's ambitions. The neurological field was clever, Harper said conversationally, but I've been living with my unique perception my entire life. Did you really think I wouldn't have learned to function without it when necessary? Thexcor's mandibles clicked in what his species recognized as reluctant admiration. You knew about Protocol Omega. Not the details, Harper admitted, but I recognized the pattern of escalation. Each countermeasure revealed more about your thinking than it concealed. They tapped the notebook. I keep track. What happens now? Asked Thexcor, acutely aware that the human could destroy what remained of the Empire's reputation with a few well-chosen words to the right delegations. Harper considered the Admiral thoughtfully. That depends on you. Earth doesn't want to destroy the Crixian Empire. We need your stability and experience. We just don't want to be dominated by it. You speak as though you determine Earth's policy, Thexcor observed. Harper smiled. No more than you determine the Empire's, Admiral. I simply help people understand each other. Is that what you call it? Thexcor couldn't keep the bitterness from his voice. It's what it is, Harper said simply. My ability isn't mind control or manipulation. I just perceive more of what's already there. The connections, the common ground, the shared interests that get buried under fear and ambition. Harper opened the notebook and showed Thexcor a page filled with intricate diagrams, connecting various species' interests, concerns, and cultural values, including those of the Crixians. Your empire thrived because you understand power, Harper continued. But power isn't just about domination. Sometimes the greatest power comes from helping others achieve their goals alongside your own. Thexcor studied the human with new understanding. You've never sought to destroy us. Of course not. The galaxy needs the Crixian Empire, just a version of it that works with others instead of above them. In that moment, Admiral Thexcor made a decision that would reshape his civilization. Perhaps we could discuss how such a version might function. Harper smiled and extended a hand in the human gesture of agreement. I'd be happy to help everyone understand that vision. As word spread throughout the galaxy about the summit's outcomes, a new legend took shape, not just of the human who could outmaneuver the mightiest empire, but of how that human had transformed an adversary into a partner. And in diplomatic chambers across the stars, representatives of countless species watched with new alertness whenever a human entered carrying a simple notebook, wondering if they too possessed the gift, or curse, of seeing beyond the masks all beings wear. The Crixian Empire never again attempted to neutralize Harper or others like them. Instead, they began a careful study of human empathic abilities, hoping to understand rather than counter them. In time, this research led to the Empire's most significant cultural renaissance in 10,000 years, as they rediscovered aspects of their own psychology long suppressed by imperial doctrine. And Harper continued to sit quietly in negotiation rooms across the galaxy, taking notes, watching, listening, and helping everyone understand each other just a little bit better.